This is Batman Dark Patterns, issue number 1, We Are the Wounded, part 1. In the beginning, we are introduced to Batman narrating. He goes on to speak about the things happening that night. At the central station, 3 are apprehended on the tracks. They're putting their own lives in danger by playing chicken with the oncoming train. Well, we find out that they are kids, and the eldest of them is only 12 years old, which is crazy. And tomorrow night, they'll be back at it doing the same thing. We find out that 24 Gotham children have died playing this game ever since the Metro was built. On the next panel, he goes on to say in the streets of the Bowery, 6 dogs have been released and that they were retrieved from the pound by the locals who claimed them as their pets. Well, they aren't just ordinary pets. Matter of fact, they're not pets at all. They are wild dogs who roam like a pack of wolves, killing cats and even terrorizing pensioners. But the Bowery has always had wild dogs, and the people of this city fear seeing the changing around them. Well, on the next page, we see that Batman's in this cave looking at his screen. He goes on to say, a building burns in Cherry Hill. At least this one was already abandoned. Either an insurance fraud or just more kids being kids. 3 years of stalking her streets at night have taught me there are heinous things in Gotham I can do nothing about. He tells us I cannot save people from themselves. Instead, I grit my teeth against the pitch black tumult over chaos and wait for a light to cut through the dark. We see that he's heading towards downtown Gotham. The bat signal is lit. Well, Lieutenant Gordon, I can tell you it definitely hurt, he says as he's zooming down this alley with a pack of dogs right behind him. This man is zooming. When it comes to driving, Batman is not a law-abiding citizen. That man don't be giving a shit. He really be saying F a red light. I'm Batman. Back to the story. He goes on to say, the killer pinpointed every major nerve cluster in the body without spilling a drop of blood, keeping him alive as he played his body as an orchestra of agony. Batman finally arrives to the crime scene, and we see Gordon and his other guy looking at this body with a bunch of needles pierced in his skin. Gordon goes on to say, we need something new, anything to tie this Vic to the previous 2. Batman says, who's this? The guy replies, oh, the Batman. I knew we'd cross paths eventually on one of these off-the-books moonlight sojourns. Gordon tells Batman that this guy is Dr. Zarika. He is a forensic pathologist who just opened a lab at Gotham U. He's been extremely helpful in IDing causes of death and the worst for wear, bodies that have come across the GCPD's desk. I thought he could be of use to us in this case. Dr. Sarika says, corpses tell a story, the wear and tear of a life, bone fractures, wound patterns. He then says to Batman, from what I read of your lifestyle, I hope I won't see you on a slab too soon. He follows up with, though I'm sure your bones and flesh hold a myriad of fascinating tales by now. Batman goes on to say, from the state of the apartment, he is like the other 2. We can see all 3 men looking down at the body. Batman says, single, living alone. Gordon replies, but other than that, they couldn't be more different. Francis Oakley was a high-flying lawyer until 2 nights ago, and Kenneth Armitage was retired, living in near poverty until our perp got a hold of him last night. Dr. Sarika says, it's magnificent work, you know. It would appear Mr. Troy here fell somewhere in between. Batman says, he removed their tongues and teeth first so they couldn't scream. Dr. Sarika goes on to say, whoever your killer is, he had plenty of medical training. I meant from a professional perspective, the cleanliness. Batman replies, obviously. Gordon, outside. Batman and Gordon end up going outside. Batman tells Gordon, I don't trust him. Gordon responds, he is odd, I'll admit, but he's good at what he does. Batman says, the drooling and the way his eyes dart around the room, consistent with abuse of encyclidine or formaldehyde. Gordon says, Lord, you think Sarika's getting high on embalming fluid? He then follows up with, look, Gotham's last coroner quit over a year ago when the Joker sent him a bouquet of flowers with a to my favorite collaborator card. Dr. Sarika's family are from old Gotham, going back generations. Even if he did leave Florida under slightly unclear conditions, he's what we've got, and we are lucky to have anything at all. And where are you going? Batman ends up firing his bat claw. He goes on to say, 3 bodies, enough to make a pattern. There will be something to find, something to lead me to the next target before the killer. The majority of serial killers know their first victim. That makes Oakley, the lawyer tortured to death at his desk 2 nights ago, the key to all Regardless, his office has refused to make his private files available to the GCPD, citing sensitive materials, so I retrieved them myself. We can see that Batman has arrived to Oakley office. As Batman is grabbing the files, somebody walks in. Who's there? Private security. I don't particularly think it's gonna be a problem. Freeze! The security guard says. Batman starts roughing them up until they keep coming and keep coming. And we see more security guards come in and they start trying to fight him. Who pays for this much security to protect a lawyer after they're dead? And we see more security guards just keep coming in. File it away for later. First, escape. This one security guard comes in, starts blasting at Batman. They have not come to play. He lets off another shot. It goes through Batman's cape and grazes him. Batman hits the security guard in the face with the files. He then smacks him with his own gun. Well, more security guards rush in. They start pointing their guns at Batman. They begin to fire at him and he jumps out the window. He ends up going to an alley and we see that he has the files in his hand and he's bleeding. On the next page, we find Batman at his Batcave. If you would allow, Master Bruce might assist in stitching that bullet wound at the very least. Batman replies to Alfred, "Hurts less when I do it myself." He begins to look at his computer. They're all in here, Alfred. Francis Oakley had recently been taken on pro bono cases. Alfred responds, "An altruistic lawyer. Pity no one told his security firm about his bleeding heart before they shot you." Batman goes on to say, "Hardly. Before that, it's all corporate clients. Ace Chemicals, the Iceberg Lounge, even a few Lex Corp subsidiaries." Alfred responds, "So he'd gotten fat representing the fattest of the fat cats, then try to work off his guilt." Alfred over here spitting rhymes and shit. Batman begins to tell Alfred that the man who died tonight was prosecuted a few years ago, accused in the deaths of his elderly parents, and quickly cleared with Oakley's help. Alfred responds, "Could these be revenge killings of some kind?" Batman goes on to say, "Troy didn't do it. The wiring in the carbon monoxide alarms was faulty. The man who died last night, he lost a lawsuit against the city after a bridge collapsed while his wife drove his daughters home across it. Oakley, they represented the city." He continues with, "One a night, men who lost their families, who were left alone in the world by tragedies. You are aware there's still a bullet shard inside that wound you're stitching," Alfred says to Batman. He then goes on to say, "Master Bruce, I'm afraid I must insist." Batman tells Alfred there's a half a dozen more men in these files who meet the same criteria. Alfred says, "You think they're all targets? How will you know who's next?" Armitage, Troy. He's simply working through them alphabetically. Alfred ends up hurting Batman. He says, "Sorry, almost done." So then, who's on the list for tomorrow night? We then see that Batman's standing on top of a building. He then says, "Signal has been lit since sundown. No doubt Gordon wants to know exactly what I thought I was doing at the law office last night, but I cannot leave my post." Batman arrives to this apartment. He goes on to say, "Michael Gallo is a petty thief, or he was until a year ago when he made the mistake of robbing the home of a main man affiliated with the Falcones. No police report was even filed, of course. The crime families conduct their own investigations. A week later, Gallo's wife was found floating in Gotham Bay. He got the message and has been working as a janitor ever since. He refused to get involved in a class action case built against the Falcones. I bugged his apartment while he was at work. Inside felt like a shrine to the dead woman. He's been sobbing since he returned home an hour ago." Batman realizes somebody is coming, but now, footsteps. The person that arrived goes, "Mr. Gallo." Mr. Gallo responds, What? Who's there? What are you doing in my apartment?" The person that came says, "It is so lonely, isn't it?" Mr. Gallo then says, "Oh God, what are you?" The person says, "Every night you cry, and the wounds never close. The gaping holes they leave behind." Pause. Batman then says, "I'll wait and let him speak. He won't speak so freely after he's apprehended. Who are they?" The person goes on to say, "I can give you what I can never have, what they took away from me." Mr. Gallo yells, "Get away from me." The person says, "They took it away from me, but you can have so very much of it." Batman says, "I wait and let him speak." Well, Mr. Gallo continues with, "I said get away. I wait until I cannot." Batman busts through the window. Mr. Gallo is looking terrified. Well, the guy with all the nails in him goes, Did that hurt? As he goes to take a punch at Batman, Batman says he's no fighter. His stance is non-existent. His hands low. I aim for his solar plexus to shut this down before it even starts. And then I realize those are nails, and I'm about to drive through his throat. Pause. And if I strike his chest, the spikes in his flesh are in danger of rupturing his heart or lungs. Even those in his arms and legs seem purposefully adjacent to the major arteries. His flesh is a tapestry of near fatal self-mutilation. I can't hit him without killing him, but he can hit me, and he does. He shouldn't be this strong. He should be in agony. It's like he doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel it. Pause. I need to use the belt. Must be something, some way to stop him from hitting me. But apparently, Gallo has been prepared in case the Falcons ever came back for him. The shot is wild. It goes safely wide, but it's still a shotgun fired in a living room. By the time I can see and hear again, the killer is gone. Batman says, "You idiot. He shouldn't be that fast." Mr. Gallo says, "What the hell did that thing want?" Batman responds, "To torture you to death." Mr. Gallo asks, "What? Why? What is he?" Alfred starts to ask Batman, "What are you looking for, Master Wayne?" Batman replies, "It's somewhere in one of these, my father's old medical books. If I remember right, it first appeared in medieval manuscripts going back to the 14th century. It was intended as a map of pain, a portrait of agony that could be inflicted on the human body." Alfred says, "Sounds somewhat abominable." Batman replies, "It wasn't meant for harm. It was intended as an index to cure people of their suffering. Here it is. This is what attacked me tonight. The wound man. He thinks he's healing his victims in some way, and tomorrow night he will kill again. To be continued."